Hi everybody, this video is going to be about getting your Mosin Nagant ready for inclement weather, like if you're going hunting or something to that effect. First of all, let's look at the bolt. This is kind of the, if you've ever operated a Mosin Nagant in less than favorable conditions, you'll notice that if you've only lightly oiled your bolt, that it starts to bind up. I mean, it's kind of like a... I mean, look at this is a rugged camming system for your bolt, and if you don't have it properly lubricated, it will be more difficult to manipulate while it's in the rifle. And it's certainly not something you want to have to deal with if you got an animal and you've literally got seconds in order to place an ethical shot. So let's look a little bit at the bolt and discuss lubrication a little bit. Okay, so here's our bolt. Now what some people like to do is just give it a light misting of oil. I'm a little bit more hardcore than that when it comes to my lubrication. I like to use some decent bearing grease. This, if you're operating in really extreme cold, this is not something you want to do. If you're in extreme cold, you want your... I'm talking about like minus 20, minus 30. You want to run your bolt dry. However, if you're in extremely heavy rain, as what I am, then I will do this. Pretty much all of these camming areas, or anywhere where bolt needs to mash up against another portion of the bolt, these are all camming surfaces here. I'm going to give these a coat of grease. This is just bearing grease. This is high temperature bearing grease, but it doesn't matter, whatever kind of grease you got. Okay, whatever you do, you don't want to get any of this on the inside of the bolt face, because if any of this grease transfers over into the chamber, that's a bad thing. So you don't want to get any grease inside here, okay, anywhere in this area. Just like that. Nothing fancy. You don't need much. Okay, did that. Now for the firing pin, you don't want to put any grease on this. Okay, just a light misting of oil will do. Something like this here, gun treatment, will work just fine. Just give it a quick. That's all you need. And reassemble. Good. Now your bolt is reassembled, it's properly greased, and if it's pouring rain and it's completely miserable out there, you won't have to fight with your rifle to get to cock it and chamber another round. It runs real smooth like this. I mean, there's very little effort to get that thing to move once you've done that. Secondly, in order to get your rifle prepared for inclement weather, and I should say heavy rain, or even if it's extremely dry out and cold, I highly recommend you get some neat's foot oil and do your leather sling braces. Okay, because these things will supersaturate with water and become super soft, and will be very prone to stretching and cracking. These ones have already started to crack a little bit. You can see here on the edges because it got super swollen with water, and if they're not protected to some type, you can even use probably a really good idea is to use mink oil. I mean, any kind of a leather product that's going to be out in the field. You grease your boots, so why wouldn't you grease these? Okay, give them a good coat of oil or grease. Mink oil or dubbin work great. for the rest of your rifle, again, a little bit of lubricant in this area is always a good idea. Water gets in here. Water actually is kind of like a lubricant in and of itself, but I've actually had this spring screw up on me here, and what did I just do? Okay, so I like to give this a little touch of grease too, just like the any kind of a mechanical part that needs take that out. That needs lubrication to stop it from binding, because water will wash all this stuff up. This here is kind of a protected part, right? But again, well, that runs better already. Don't need much grease, just a little bit. Whatever you do, don't get grease in this area here. Again, for the same reason what we discussed before, we don't want to have any grease into your find its way into your chamber. That's just to make sure your follower doesn't ride low and then to get stuck in that position. Everything else, I don't think you really need to spend a lot of care and attention to. These are extremely rugged rifles. This rifle here had very oxidized kind of a lacquer finish on it when I got it, and so I did strip it off because it really looked bad, and exposed wood is never a good idea. So this has been treated with tung oil, and it's had about 5 coats on it, wet sanded in between, and had another layer placed on top. It looks like I'm running varnish like the original rifle, but this is actually a tung oil finish, and this is extremely wear resistant and resilient. So the inside of the rifle, the outside of the rifle, and the wood has been waterproofed, and as such, if your rifle gets super saturated, as I expect this rifle is about to be, you don't want exposed wood to start swelling, because it places pressure in different parts of the rifle, especially down the barrel channel, where you do not want to have wood swelling and pressing up against like the barrel channel or inside the receiver, or because it will do funny things to your accuracy. And the last thing you want is to pull off a well-aimed shot and have your bullet vector off and miss, or wound the animal needlessly. And this is one thing that you do in order to ensure that that's rectified. I mean, you may not necessarily take care of it entirely, but you'll help to at least mitigate the effect. Most of these rifles were fairly well waterproofed with varnish. However, if yours is starting to wear in areas, you may consider doing that. Yes, there are those folks out there that will say that removing the original finish impacts the overall collectability of the rifle. However, for a piece that you're into for only $150, what's more important, keeping the collectability of the animal, of the rifle, or getting a clean, ethical shot? Others will disagree, and will agree to disagree. That's my view. So that's it. Let's take her out and go do some shooting. This is the model 19, I should say model 9130 Mosin Nagant, Russian manufacturer Ishvish from 1939, and it is a refurb. And we're going to be running some 203 grain soft points out of it today, and testing at various ranges, just what it indicates here on the rear sight for distance. The sights have been calibrated, or I should say the sights have been adjusted for 148 grain milsurp ammunition, but we'll just see where things lie with the 203 grain hunting ammunition. Steel case stuff. This stuff here was manufactured in, where is it? 2010 at the LVE manufacturing plant in Novosibirsk, Russia. And haven't run too much of that ammunition through this rifle today, or yet, so today we're going to just run a few tests, and I thought I'd bring you along with me. So until then, let's have some fun. In 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2000. It's pretty good at 200 meters with consistency. Mind you, it's only 200 meters. That 203 grain bullet really hits that gong hard, even at 200 meters. It's just swaying back and forth. 14-inch gong. That's actually pretty heavy, and it's taking a big chunk of steel out of the gong. It's T1 steel, so it's pretty hard. But that 203 grain slug hitting it at that velocity it's a lot of energy. This is good moose medicine, guys. I just hit that 14-inch gong at 200 meters in a kneeling 4 times out of 5. You know, I'm not a great shot, but it'll definitely good moose medicine, that ammunition. I say hunt with it with confidence. And incidentally, even though I'm shooting at 100 meters, sorry, I'm shooting at 200 meters, my sight setting is at 100 still, and I'm getting regular hits. Interesting. At some point in time, you will find that your barrel and chamber have been, I should say, compromised by water. And you can tape up your barrel, the muzzle, as I've seen lots of people do, and I will do that myself. Primarily, the reason why you do that is to keep debris out of your barrel and chamber area. You will try to mitigate water from getting in. However, ultimately, you're not going to be able to keep water out if it's raining as it is in these videos. You will get water in your bore and in your chamber. And it reminds me of a situation that occurred to me shooting in BCRA many years ago with the No. 4 Mark I Lee Enfield. It was sideways, pounding, rain, and everybody's rifles were compromised by water. We didn't have time to give the rifles a pull through. However, during the 200 meter zeroing, 2 shots for zeroing and then 10 shots for score, absolutely everybody on the firing point shot high. To the point where, you know, they're almost out of the score zone, and this is only at 200 meters. So what I saw everybody doing at that point in time after the first shot was dialing their sights down because they figured they were just off. However, you have to remember that water will reduce the chamber dimensions of your rifle as it acts as a sealant between the case and the walls of your chamber. Essentially what you've done is made the chamber smaller or tighter. And as a result of that, after the first shot, everybody's velocities were high and the bullets were shooting faster. That is what we refer to as a fouling shot. Try to remember that the first round is likely going to impact a little bit high. If you're hunting, that's a very real thing to take into consideration. After the first shot, your rifle is no longer fouled. After everybody had dialed down their sights, they were hitting dirt in front of the targets with the second sighting shot. And that particular stage, everybody's scores were low, except for me, because I know that this is how this works. After the second sighting shot, I was hitting I hit a V-bolt, so I knew that I was no longer fouled. I was ready for the competition. Don't adjust your sights after the first shot. Do it after the second shot. If the bullet is impacting not where you want it to be, then after the second sighting shot, feel free to give yourself to change your sight setting. Okay, well, lesson learned. Never ever shoot at your gong with 203 grain LVE ammunition. Bugger. Oh well, them's the ropes. At the end of the day, when you've got an extremely wet rifle, whether you've been hunting or just shooting out in the rain, doing some target shooting, or shooting at some cans in the bush, what you want to do is to ensure your rifle is completely dried. Now, if you're like me, you like to run wood heat in your house, standing the rifle in the corner right next to the wood stove is always a good way of helping to achieve that as well. Instead of just throwing it wet in back in the gun safe, I like to tear down my bolt and basically get the bolt really nice and hot, sitting on top of the wood stove, just to boil off any kind of remaining water, just long enough to do that, and then you can re-grease and oil and reassemble. Just a little tidbit: heat is your friend. Dry those suckers out and get them ready for the next day's shooting.